much for being here. This is going to be a live podcast recording. Good morning, Jay in Australia. Good morning, Juan. My name is Brendan Lowe. If you guys don't know me, thank you guys so much for being here. This is going to be a live podcast recording. I just said that. It sounded like a broken record. But I'm going to be going over the 3 ways that I like to practice improv, and I highly recommend you do as well. Now, this is going to be kind of more of a general step back. So I'm not going to be teaching you specific tools, kind of like more of a process. It'll be more of a process today. So, hey, David from Minnesota. Awesome. Juan, we won't have too many people on this call. Actually, I didn't send 2 emails out. I usually remind people that I'm going live. I didn't get to do that today. So if anyone saw the email in the morning, then they will be on here. But yeah, I didn't get to do any podcasts last week because I had an event with Peter Martin, Adam Manis, Jamie Ebersol, and a whole bunch of other people. And it was the live virtual jazz summit, which is really, really awesome. Put on by Brent and at Learn Jazz Live. Really, really cool thing. And I'm just so thankful. I just wanted to share my appreciation for Brent. He'll probably never see this, but I'm just so thankful that he did that. You know, he brought all of us together, and it was absolutely incredible. And it was just, it was an amazing thing. And just, you know, seeing these other people's presentations and the live Q&As, it was really awesome. And I don't think I've ever seen this done in a live virtual setting, you know. Obviously there's all sorts of jazz conferences you can go to and things like that, but this was just so cool. It was so awesome. And a lot of the presentations were all of them were incredible. I didn't get to see all of them. I watched the majority of them, but they were all just fantastic. So I was super swamped, and now I'm back, and here we are. So I'll be doing another Q&A for members later in the week, and I am really finalizing the final steps of the group program, the 90-day Jazz Piano Accelerator program, which should start at the end of March, I believe, the end of March. If you're not on that list, for the waiting list, go to jazzpianoschool.com/group, and you can get on that to receive the details. I should be sending. I know I keep saying this. I'm so sorry, but things are moving around, and my schedule is just it's a very it's hard to nail me down because I do a lot of things. So committing to dates, because I have so many different types of dates and things and projects that I work on, it's a difficult situation for sure. So I think with that being said, we can get started. It's not going to be too long today, but again, before I get started, I really want you guys to understand that this is going to be a process I'm showing you. It's a process to practice improvisation. And what I see commonly from all sorts of students, not just piano students, but any sort of instrumentalist, is that most of the time, and myself included, I never really knew how to practice improv. Like I never really knew what exactly to do. And I've simplified things a lot in this 3-step process because obviously you can go into so many different types of things. But these 3 steps, I believe, are really, really important to improving as an improv artist, right? And if you leave these out, then you're going to kind of be floundering, guessing, not really knowing what to do. These 3 steps are really, really, really important. Now, like I said, there's so many other steps, but if you can kind of grasp this concept, I know you'll start seeing better results in a quicker amount, in a faster time period. All right. Alan said the live jazz workshop was amazing. Wow. Yes, it was. Favorite jazz pianist? Easy. Oscar Peterson. Love him. Grew up on Oscar. I love every jazz pianist, but he's my favorite. He was my main influence. Richard, Carmen. Hey guys. Hey everyone. William. Hey, Paul. Everyone. Sean. Alan. Thanks so much for being here. Storm 8E. Hi from Scotland, Sean. That's awesome. I'm trying to plan a trip with my dad to Scotland, and we've been wanting to go so much because we love Scotch so much. We want to go to a lot of the distilleries, see the land, and it's in our heritage, so that's going to be a lot of fun at some point. All right, so again, you guys are a live audience. Feel free to ask questions as I'm recording the podcast in the chat, and again, at the end of the recording, I will answer your questions. I'll answer your questions, and that's part of the perks of being in a live audience. So it's really, really cool. And again, I think that's it. So with that being said, I'm going to start recording. Here we go. All right, welcome to the Jazz Piano School podcast, episode number 224. My name is Brendan Lowe, creator and founder of Jazz Piano School. In this particular podcast episode, I'm going to be teaching you my 3 steps to practice improvising. Now, a lot of times we go and we start to improvise, but we really don't know how to practice in what we're doing, right? So these 3 steps should give you a clear path to help you become a better improviser. All right? Definitely go to jazzpianoschool.com to check out all the free education we have. And with that being said, let's dive right into the lesson. Here we go. Step number 1. We need a focus when practicing improv. We need a focus. For example, we need a tool. So let's say, what are we working on? Really nail it down. Maybe we're working on the blues scale, right? Maybe that's the tool, the improvisational tool that we're working on, okay? So step number 1 is to nail down the tool that you're currently working on. Like, what is it? You can't just, now there's going to be more steps to this, but you need to pick your focus. Maybe it's your pentatonic scales, right? Maybe it's your minor pentatonic. Maybe it's your hexatonic scale, right? Maybe it's your bebop approaches. Maybe it's your chord scale above to half step below. It doesn't matter what it is, but you want to nail down the tool that you're working on. You need focus. You need a direction. Now, again, just to emphasize this, the tools that you can nail down can be textures. They can be musicality. Maybe your focus is dynamics, right? That's not necessarily a tool, but maybe you're working on shifting from articulation, right? So you could go from loud to soft, right? Something like that. Maybe you go from soft to loud. Whatever it is, right? And again, so your tool is just some sort of focus that you're working on in the moment. You have to have some sort of focus, all right? Step number 1, very easy. So with that being said, let's start with the blues scale. Let's say this is my tool, okay? Now, step number 2 is going to be developing a relationship with your tool. Now, what do I mean by this exactly? Well, you need to have, your ear needs to be adjusted to the sound. Your fingers need to be adjusted to the movements. There's a lot that needs to happen before we can actually start to use this tool. So with the blues scale, obviously, we need to work on this technically. We need to develop a relationship with. So I'm going to practice exercises to ensure that I can physically go up and down the scale or play different ways of the scale, which I'll get to in a second. But again, we just need to physically be able to execute our tool. We need to have some sort of relationship with it. We need to be able to hear it, right? Now, in this particular step number 2, there's no metronome. I'm just moving back and forth and trying to hear everything that's happening. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm going through the different areas of the scale and just listening. I'm just listening and playing around, like I'm literally experimenting here. Now, this is more of a beginner level. Again, if you have more dexterity, you can add different types of trills in here. Do some jumps, right? Find out what you like. In this step, you're just experimenting. Listen very closely. Find out what you like, right? Maybe you like that. Play around with it. Play it 10 times. Maybe switch it up, right? If you like the pattern, maybe change your voicing. Maybe I just liked what I played there, so I'll play it again. What did I like about that? I like this little slide here. So I'm going to play around with that more. Maybe I like this texture here. So again, what I'm doing here is, again, just developing a relationship with this particular tool, right? I'm taking it very, very slow. Let's say our tool was a little bit more out. Let's say, you know, let's say we're using the whole tone scale, but, you know, in a hexatonic manner. So we have two augmented triads, C augmented and D augmented, right? Maybe I'm getting used to this tool. So what am I going to do here? I'm going to do the same exact thing if this is the first time I'm using it. And then maybe, again, there's no time. There's no pressure here, right? Just breathe and experiment. You know, try all sorts of different things. Try different registers, different voicings, anything. You're just experimenting, and again, you're letting your ear adjust to the improvisational tool. Now, as you start to move through this, you can start to add a little bit of tempo here, but not with the use of a metronome at all. All right, that's a pretty out tool, right? Let's take a different type of tool. Let's take a tool that I love to use over any sort of kind of minor blues or minor modal sound. This is kind of like a variation of a pentatonic scale, and I kind of like to combine them or blend them. So this right here, I just call this more of a minor sus. So we have this minor sound, we have a sus, and then it finishes off with just the 5 and the 7. Right? So again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's 5 notes. It is a variation of the pentatonic scale, but it's not the traditional, your traditional minor pentatonic, right? So let's say I was getting used to this tool. Again, I'm just going to experiment with this just freely. I'll see what kind of sounds I can get. Maybe I do runs. Maybe I go fast. Maybe I try some fast runs, right? Maybe I do slow. Again, I'm completely experimenting here. Again, now I haven't gotten to step 3 yet, right? So I haven't gotten to step 3 yet. I'm still completely experimenting, all right? So at this point, you should kind of get the idea. And again, if you're used to working with a tool, let's say you know the blues scale really well, I highly recommend and encourage you to break out of your box. So if you've used the blues scale, you know certain movements or licks, right, in the blues scale. Maybe you know that. That's something you play a lot. Break out of the box. Right? Experiment, let your ear hear more sounds. Play the blues scale down here in the low end. You can't really see this on the camera. I love using the blues scale down here. Now, anytime I do something new, I'm developing a relationship with this improvisational tool. And then maybe I switch it up. I'm going to F7 here, right? Again, all complete experimentation with the tool that you're working on, so your ear can adjust, your fingers can adjust, and your whole soul and being can start to hear the sounds that are coming out of that tool. All right? That's going to be step number 2. Now, once you've worked on that a little bit, right, and you've built up some sort of facility with the tool that you're working on, I'll stay with the blues scale for now. Step number 3 is actually implementing it into some sort of tune, progression, or tempo. Now, I don't recommend you go directly into a tune because you just want to start to get used to it. Again, for really low-level beginners, this is going to be enough. Like, this is going to be enough. Like, think about it when you're just learning how to do improvisation. Let's just say you're first learning how to improvise over a C major 7 and you're just using chord tones. Maybe the tool you're using is just chord tones. At this point, I've done my experimentation. I'm going to put on a metronome very, very slowly. And I'm going to try and use my tool to improvise. So let's say the metronome's about here. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Here I go. I'll play my chord again, just so I can hear the harmonies. Now, the thing I want you to take away from this is that even though it's a very, very beginner level, right? This can apply to advanced players. I use this still to this day for any improv tool that I'm trying to implement into my playing and develop a better relationship with so that it can come out in a more free way. Does that make sense? So let's bump the level on this. Instead of just using chord tones, maybe I'm using the full mode. So I'm using the full scale. Again, I'm still talking about step number 3. You still have to go through all the steps. Steps 1 and 2 come first, right? And then step number 3. So I'm just using the Ionian scale, and I'm going to repeat step number 3 just over one chord. I'm still just using one chord here, right? Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? So again, I have some sort of direction now. I have a tempo. I have a set structure in step number 3 that I'm using to help me focus my improv practice, right? I've set the tool. I've practiced my tool, so I have some sort of facility. I've also experimented with it. I've developed a relationship with it. I can move around with it. Now, again, we're implementing it into more real-life situations. This isn't a tune. It's just a chord. But this particular situation right here is going to be necessary in tunes. Right? We're just isolating the situation. Now, maybe I bump it up. Let's say I'm a more intermediate player and you want to get better at using the Lydian scale. Right? So the only change here is going to be this F sharp. Maybe I want to develop my ear so that it adjusts better to this F sharp. Right? Because for a lot of you, this is going to be abnormal to your sound, to your body, to what you're hearing. So this whole process is going to help you better blend to any tool that you're using and integrate it into your soul so you can play more freely. Right, so I'm on step number 2. I'll just experiment a little bit. Play the out thing a lot so you start to adjust to it. Maybe put it in your voicing too. And again, this is me going to my level now to build a better relationship with this particular tool. Okay, so you get the picture. That was literally me at the level that I'm at, just experimenting with the Lydian tool. I mean, you know, I have a very great relationship with this particular tool already, but I was seeing if I could go further. Always see if you could go further, and I did kind of get some cool sounds out that I liked that I may use in the future. Right, that right there could be a composition that I could come up with. So. Again, step number 3 now, I'm going to integrate it and inject it into some sort of structured situation. Now, again, this could be one chord. It could be a progression. Maybe I end my 2-5-1 with my Lydian tool. So if you're more intermediate player or intermediate to advanced, you could use your bebop. And then end with your Lydian tool. Right? And so I'm injecting it. And again, this doesn't just mean you're just doing this once or twice, right? You're spending 20, 30 minutes on this every single day, right? Working on this, these situational bases and change it up, change up the situation. Like maybe my situation that I'm working on now is 2-5-1. And again, I'm ending on the Lydian. Again, I'm kind of, and again, so like the situational basis that I'm using as a structured platform to use my tool over is just a 2-5-1. Now maybe I take a random progression, right? So maybe I take C major 7, A flat major 7, F major 7. And again, I'm not swinging here. That's just literally what came out of me first, right? So maybe I swing it. Sorry. And again, I'm repeating that progression over and over and over again to inject and work on specifically the tool that I've now built a relationship with, and I'm now playing, right, over these structured ways. Now, obviously, the very last step, if you're working on some sort of improvisation tool, put it into a tune. Put it into a tune, right? So if I'm playing Autumn Leaves, maybe Maybe I'm soloing over autumn leaves. Now I want to inject my tool that I've been working on and see how it comes out. See how it comes out in autumn leaves. Right? So I just use all Lydian there. Right? So I've just started to apply my tool to a tune, like whatever tune it is you're working on. Again, you're starting to use your improvisational structure that you've worked on with the 3 steps into a tune now. Here comes Lydian. There's more Lydian. There's my Lydian. Right? So that's the tool I've been working on up until this point. And again, it could be any tool. Like it could be any tool. Maybe you're trying to inject the blues scale, right? Whatever it is, right? So again, the final step is moving into, whatever tune it is that you're putting that particular tool into. Okay, so just to recap real quick, step number 1 is going to be to define your tool, whatever it is. Just simply define your tool. This is a very, very important step. And again, there are times for experimentation where you just want to sit down and solo, see what comes out. But when you're practicing, right, define your tool. So again, the blues scale, right? And then step number 2, develop your relationship with your tool. Just move back and forth, do whatever, experiment, no tempo, no pressure, right? Go slowly. Really listen to each note. Right? Develop a relationship with all the parts of the sound and the tool, how you can use it. Get as creative as possible here. Play 2 notes, play 3 notes, play slides, play octaves, play in all registers, right? Really get a feel for it. You want to feel it. You want to hear it. You want to know it inside and out, okay? And then finally, and again, you can put a little time in this step, a little bit. No metronome though, no pressure, but feel free to play with some time to help you out. Right, I'm just feeling the time internally. Right, just like that. And again, I've kind of applied a little bit of time just to see how it goes, just to see what it gives back to me. What am I struggling with? Maybe I stick with one portion of the tool. Again, still step number 2. Step number 3, finally, is I'm going to use some sort of structured platform to start to work on my tool, right? This is where the pressure begins because we are using a metronome and some sort of progression or tempo that binds us to stay with our tool. So for example, maybe I just stick on a C7 chord. So on and so forth. But again, I'm now restricted to whatever structure that I pick that allows me to continuously practice using my tool, whether it's playing the blues form, whether it's playing 2 blues chords, maybe just C and F. Maybe it's the whole blues form, right? Maybe it's just 1 chord. It doesn't matter, but step 3 is where you're kind of restricting and binding yourself, which will put some pressure on you to focus your tool. And then again, you can repeat and go back through the whole entire process as many times as you want. Maybe you need to develop a better relationship with your tool, and maybe you need to work on a little bit more. Maybe you're not really sure about some areas. Go back to step number 2 and work on developing that relationship with certain areas of your tool you're not familiar with, you're not comfortable, and then go back into step number 3. Maybe you've chosen in step number 3 your structure is too much, right? Maybe you've chosen to use the whole blues form, but you're not ready for that. Use your binding structure as just 1 chord. It's okay to just use 1 chord for like 1,000 measures. Practice playing the blues scale over 1 chord for the whole week, for the whole month, right? There's no rush here. This is an amazing thing. Just relax, right? And really go in depth with exactly what you're trying to improvise with. Listen more, come back to the cutting board, right? And again, repeat this process as many times as you want. And the more you can do this, I guarantee the better results you're going to have as an improvisational artist. And again, you're going to make more progress in a shorter amount of time. Thank you guys so much for listening. This has been podcast episode new 224. Go to jazzpianoschool.com to check out all the free information that we have there available for you. And if you want to join the live audience at any time, go to jazzpianoschool.com/live podcast. And you can join the live audience that I have here right now that I'm about to answer questions for. It's the only time that you'll be able to ask me questions, If you join the live audience, I'll answer any and all questions that you have after the live podcast recordings. Hope you have a wonderful day, and as always, happy practicing. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was it. Give me 1 sec. I'm going to grab some water. I was struggling for some reason. I think it's the pollen here or something. My voice is going faster than usual. All right. I don't see too many questions. Does anyone have any questions about that? I mean, it's a pretty straightforward process. But maybe if you guys want some advice on how to apply this to certain areas that you're working on, what are you all working on right now? What are you working on? What improvisational things or tools are you working on right now? Maybe you don't know, and that's okay. But just throw some things out there. Richard, lingus is a straight style. So essentially anything that's not swung that has a straight beat is just essentially called straight style. So it's just straight. Carmen, thanks so much. Awesome. I'm glad that was super helpful for you. And again, if anyone wants to kind of be brave and throw what they're working on out into the chat, I can give some demonstrations on how to move that through the process that I was just teaching, right? But if not, if no one has any questions, then that's okay too. Jay says, with the exception of not focusing, is there 2 common mistakes that most people do which holds them back? That's a great question, Jay. I would say yes. I would say the common mistakes with improvisation is kind of knowing the layers of improvisation. And this isn't really a mistake per se. I think it's just lack of knowledge from the student. And I encourage all of you to kind of work at, and I'm going to be releasing an improvisational course later this year with the different steps and layers, but you want to get used to understanding what tools create certain sounds, right? Create certain sounds. So a lot of us, we're looking to play, we want to improvise. Right? That's all good and great, but like there's so many different things to improvise over, right? And the more you can kind of nail down exactly what you're looking to do or like the way you're looking to sound, the better focus you can have in going into that. So I would say one of the common mistakes is really not knowing what you want. You know, when I was like, someone asked me about my favorite pianist. When I was growing up, I loved Oscar Peterson. I loved him so much. I still love him. I honestly, like, I think him, like Brad Meldau, Keith, Chick, Herbie, those guys are like out of this world. Oscar's articulation and touch and swing feel and dexterity and ability. Art Tatum, obviously, is just second to none, you know? So I think just knowing, I don't really know. Here's my thought. When I really wanted to play exactly like Oscar. So like I knew exactly the sound that I was looking for. I was looking to create this sort of swing motion, a lot of the lines he used. And so that's what I focused on, right? And now I didn't really know what it consisted of, but I do now. And so the more you can kind of learn about the improvisational style that you're reaching for, that you want to work on, the better off you're going to be. So if you're looking to get a bebop sound, that's going to consist of certain improvisational elements. If you're looking to get a modern sound like I was playing before, right? That's going to be a certain style as well, right? Your direction completely shifts depending upon what you're looking to get. And it takes years to get all of them. But it'll drastically shorten the time that you can get good at something, and the more you can narrow down your focus. So that's a big, I wouldn't say, like I said, not a mistake, just kind of like a miss. It's a big miss that I see with students where they're trying to do everything or they don't really know what they want. So the more you can kind of focus exactly on where you're going and focus on the tools that you want, then, you know, that is going to bring you faster to that thing. I think, like I said, the focus, the lack of understanding. This is a great question. Honestly, I could do a whole podcast on this, but the lack of understanding on transcriptions and analyzation of solos and how to actually implement that. That's going to be my part 2. I actually did a part 1. I'm going to do a part 2 after this one. I wanted to do this first, but really being able to understand solos and transcriptions rather than just play them through and just kind of have that be it. The more you can take a deeper dive into the specifics of what is happening, like what is a player doing here in this first 2 beats? Like why is he doing this in the second 2 beats? You know, if you can understand the Lego building blocks of transcriptions, most students go to transcriptions and they just play them all the way through. Now that's great, but like you want to be able to use the specific pieces from the transcription to develop your own style, like Alan said, like develop your own sound. Otherwise, there's so many YouTube videos and Instagram videos of these people playing these solos and like they're playing the right notes, but it's just a recreation of the solo, right? Like how does that help you get better as an improvisational artist? Like improv is spontaneous. It should be spontaneous from yourself. You know, that's what we're trying to build. We're trying to build spontaneous creation of our own self, of our own soul, right? So how do we get from a transcription to that point where we're expressing what we want to express? And I think there's a big divide there in the jazz educational world that, you know, it tells students to play transcriptions and learn them and memorize them, but it never really tells a student how to get to the point where you are spontaneously creating things from your own soul, you know, like whatever you want to play and expressing your own emotions and feelings into the piano based on all the work you've done previously. So that was a long-winded answer, Jay, but it was kind of all over the place. All right, I got a lot of, got some more content here to work with you guys. Blues scale, Carmen, that's great. That's great. You know, yeah, I mean, again, I always recommend working on your jazz keys first, right? Which I call the 7 jazz keys: C, F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G. Okay, and that will give you the majority of keys that you need for 99% of tunes. Like you don't really see many jazz standards and tunes written in the key of E, B, A, D. It just doesn't happen unless you're playing original compositions. Herman says, let the melody note set the mood. That's great. That's really, really cool as well. You know, yeah, use the melody and work with that to develop the atmosphere. William says dominant bebop scale. Cool. How to integrate it into improv. Yes. So the dominant bebop scale, this is a great question. The dominant bebop scale is definitely a tool. Which one should I use? So the main premise you want to take away from the dominant bebop scale is the passing tone and the scalar motion that it can provide you. Now, scalar motion provides a lot of different things. Fluidity, and it provides you with chord tones hitting downbeats. So the fluidity of the scalar motion is fantastic in your lines because so many people and beginners, even I was jumping all over the place when I was soloing. You know, sometimes it's just nice to hear this. Or you want to hear... Like listen as I change the harmonies here. It's not fancy, but it sounds great. Now, the bebop scale and integrated improv is a great tool for connection and moving up and down the scale, like I just mentioned, in a scalar motion, and it will align your chord tones on downbeat. So let's say I want to get from here to here. To create a line, I can use the bebop scale. And then maybe resolve like that. Maybe I do that. Maybe I do that. Right? So it's a vehicle to get me from one place to another, on the piano. It also aligns my chord tones. And this particular movement right here is just that is serving as a really, really big indicator to create the bebop sound, right? I'm sure you've heard that line before. Right? So it's like the vehicle that can get you to certain areas of the line. Now, again, the way I'd practice this using the 3-step process is I would go through the same thing. Know your tool inside and out. Just use maybe the D7 bebop scale, right, in the key of G. Work with it. Experiment with it. You want to be able to play this starting on each chord tone going up. Right, from the 3rd, from the 5th. Right, from the 7th. And then coming down as well. Now the 5. Now the 3. Now the 1. Right? And move around, experiment with it. And then finally, add some of your own into it. Maybe you do that. Starting on chord tones with the use of the bebop scale is always great because it's going to align your notes on chord tones. And again, there's different ways to start the bebop scale. So for example, if I started on the 9, I would add another chromatic here to align my whole bebop scale again. Right, you see how that aligns? Okay. But again, this is the process I would take to kind of inject it into my improv. I'd still use the same thing. And again, the great thing about the bebop scale is that one area of it. It's the passing tone between the 1 and the 7. Without that, the scale is just a scale. Right? It would just be a dominant scale. But because we have this passing tone, that passing tone is the most important part of your scale. So make sure you want to include that while you're soloing. Otherwise, it kind of, it doesn't even use the purpose of the bebop scale. Like the bebop scale surrounds itself with that passing tone. Yeah, sorry. Right, so I could start off with it. Right? So you're kind of using bits and pieces of the bebop scale. And again, using the bebop scale for runs up and down is great. Sonny Stitt did this, Bud Powell, so many different guys. Clifford, they would just run the bebop scale up and down, to create these lines, flourishing lines. whatever it is. I was moving into my other key here. Sorry. And they would kind of just move up and down to create these cool things. But the only thing that's happening there is the bebop scale, right? All right, so working on simplifying lines into more distinct phrases, that's great. So that's a tool in itself. Like, that's a musicality tool. That's a texture tool, right? So you're working on a specific musical concept. That is a tool in itself. And you want to think about that as a tool, right? So as you're working on that, Alan, this is great, for everybody. You would work on, like you said, simplifying lines into more distinct phrases. So I think you mean maybe melodic phrases, just simple melodic phrases that are distinct and intentional, right? So maybe this. That's more distinct, intentional. Maybe even more simple than that. Something like that, right? But again, that's your tool. Experiment with it and then put it into a structured platform, which is step number 3, to help you move forward with that and kind of give you some limitations, right? Because you want to put yourself in the pressure cooker. Great, Carmen, no problem. Drew says, how important to practice in all keys? Okay, so that was kind of the similar question. It does get very important the more, the better you get, right? Because things are going to move around. Like, if you haven't practiced I would say to practice, you need to practice individual tools in all keys. For example, like I said, like a B minor 7, you're going to see this chord a lot in a lot of tunes. But